All right, fantastic. Let's start the demonstration. There's more people popping on board, and of course, if anybody who's late who catches it halfway through, well, you're probably not even listening to this, we'll have it available also as a self walkthrough. Well, again, good afternoon and good morning or good evening, wherever you are in the time zone. My name is Steve O'Halloran, and I'm going to be your MC for the next 54 minutes or so. We're going to be talking about how to basically exploit a very cool utility called Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit, and how to use it for a Microsoft audit or any other sort of SAM assessment that may be Microsoft-centric or non-centric. And who's the guy on the left? This is actually an old postage stamp from Canada. That's where I'm from. And this is Mr. David Thompson, very unknown, but he was actually he was a Welsh guy, and he came over to Canada and never left, probably because he got lost. No, he was actually one of the world's most renowned cartographers, and he basically mapped about 3.9 million square miles of North America, most of it on the west end side. You can see a little bit of Vancouver there. In fact, he even laid claim to where the Snake River and the Columbia River meet, which is a little lower down here, and named it for the British Empire. Now, if that had gone through, Canada would have eventually owned, I guess, Microsoft and most of Starbucks. But what I'm just trying to explain here, it's not what you map that counts, it's what you negotiate, because all of that land got seceded back to the United States in the 1818 renegotiation. So interesting guy, bit of a mapper himself, but at the very end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that mapping alone is just half the game, and sometimes it's what you negotiate, not what you map. Anyways, let's go in a little about us very, very quickly. And then most of this demonstration is quasi-technical, and we will be talking about how to do things. And so there's just a little bit of, yeah, you guessed it, a little bit of marketing at the beginning, a little at the end, and then after that, let's just get down to the real work here. Of course, I'd love for all of you to be my customers and actually resellers as well, but let's just talk about MAP. But first, Asset Labs. We are a web-based portfolio, and if you want to call us SAM, we're a licensed portfolio solution. SAM's rather generic for me. I have been in the industry since, God, 1996 or 7, can't remember. Check my LinkedIn. We don't offer any inventory tools, which is we're kind of unique in the environment. We actually sit on top of everything that you are collecting as far as inventory is concerned, and we aggregate it. This is actually in stark contrast to my previous company that I co-founded called Asset Metrics, which was a web-based inventory tool. Started around 2000. Eventually, we sold it to Microsoft in 2006. So it's still the only SAM tool that Microsoft has ever acquired from the industry. And though it's no longer available in its original format, it is portions of it are available and still living today in what we're now calling Intune. And it's also the foundation of many of the AI or asset intelligence reports found within SCCM. I'm just grabbing some coffee here. What we do, and this is where we're getting all of our knowledge of how to work with MAP, is we do offer a 30-day tactical assessment to help customers who are engaging in a Microsoft audit or a SAM engagement. We call it Microsoft Assist or MS Assist. And what we do is we sit between the inventory data providers and deliver the management reports. And so, yes, we will work with any combination of, and I'm talking combination, not uniquely, but combinations of, Landesk, SCCM, the MAP tool, which we'll be talking about, even the Deloitte scripting tool. If any of you have ever engaged with Deloitte, who actually works on behalf of Microsoft to assist in these SAM audits, they have their own scripting tool. It's theirs, but we know actually how to read it and reinterpret it. Of course, Altiris and our great friends in Ireland, iQuate, with their IQ Sonar. We can actually work with them. In fact, just a little bit of a spin for them. iQuate really started off being a fantastic Oracle analysis tool, but many of the functions and beyond that found within MAP are also found in our IQ Sonar tool. It is it's a highly value-added tool, and so I'm just suggesting later on in life, give these guys a look. A fantastic company, fantastic solution. And what we do is we'll take all the data, and at the end of the day, we will convert that data into the effective license position that you have to hand in for your licensing. We will calculate for you the complex analysis of where do I put my SQL Server licenses based upon the clustering within the VMware servers, and and what's left? What do I have to buy, if anything? And we will even not only calculate, what your position is, we will forecast what your position could be up to 4 quarters in advance with true-up forecasting. That's still exclusive to us. But let's talk about MAP. What is this thing? Well, it's actually the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit. And I don't profess to be an absolute expert in MAP, but I do play one on the internet. I'm not a developer in any way, but we have had so many customers working with MAP, and we help customers with MAP, and that this seminar is basically an aggregate of our experience. We might have even some things that are wrong, and our apologies on that, but we're going to give you, we hope, some fantastic pointers. What is it? Well, it's a free inventory tool from Microsoft, and of course, it's intended to help the customers understand how to get from technology A to a preferred Microsoft technology to assess and plan. That's what MAP stands for, MAP. It's free, it's agentless, right? And it gets a lot of software and hardware. It can do a lot of things that most other network management tools and other inventory providers can't do. Not all, but many. Getting the additions of SQL Server. It's not found in the add remove section. Determining what we call the VM host to guest relationship between VMware on your bare metal blade server and your virtualized servers. Finding that relationship, very difficult. Getting data from Exchange, a number of mailboxes and the additions, and so on and so on. And as it says here, is it designed for SAM? No, absolutely not. But we in the industry have sort of exploited it. It's a remarkable, helpful tool, but it is a utility, and it's not really meant to be the end game. It's supposed to assist you with the start and get you going quickly. But what is it not, right? With apologies for the spelling, is that Yoda talk? Well, it's not a license compliance solution. You can't use MAP all by itself to determine your license position. There's no inputs for licensing. It doesn't do any purchase usage rights calculations such as redactions or removing the production states from SQL Server. At the same time, it's not a network management tool. It offers no install, add, move, add, change, or whatnot. It's a one-time tool, more or less. There's no history to it, but it does collect a lot of data quickly, and we actually highly suggest it to our customers, and all of our customers have used it either in solo or in satellite offices or in conjunction with the other tools that they're using. And so what is it again? Well, here's a screenshot of it. And hopefully most of you have already engaged with the MAP tool, have downloaded it. It's free. You can get it from Microsoft.com/MAP. It uses SQL Server Express to store the data and various what we'll call touchless methods to get all the inventory across. And it will identify all your Windows and, in theory, VMware-based devices. Now, again, it's really used as part of a planning tool. And so when I talk about where MAP fails, it's probably not the right word, and where MAP succeeds, it's probably not the right word as well. It's really not intended for how we in our industry are using it, and I think there's actually some Microsoft people on board, and I am in talks with some of the Microsoft people. We do give some suggestions and concepts, and maybe in the future as an industry we can sort of adopt MAP and have and sway the development of MAP. But as a customer or as a SAM advisor, now the question is, okay, I want to inventory all of my devices, but you don't know what you don't know. What is 100% if you don't have a good inventory? And you have to generate goals when using MAP or any other inventory tool to go, all right, those are all my devices. So how do we know what it is, right? And there's a problem with trying to achieve a 100%. You get asymptotically harder and harder, like the speed of light. It just gets more energy in order to get those 100%. There's many ways to identify what's our target count. You can use the number of active users that you have in your Active Directory, the mailboxes, if you have a one-to-one relationship between your users and your devices. Take a look at the previous purchase quantities used for Windows Desktop, Office, found within your MLS, or just make a really good educated guess and see where you go. with that goal in mind, we set two minimums for our customers based upon the type of the operating system and thus the device. For servers, minimum, we force our customers to go beyond 95%. Sounds like a lot, but quite honestly, servers are pretty well locked down. They're highly centralized. You should know where they are. And there's no what we call IMAC churn, install, move, add, change. In other words, nobody's re-imaging these things. These are workhorses. The other reason for trying to achieve greater than 95% is that there are some high-value assets that Microsoft is very concerned that you are properly representing. They're highly valued and they're worth a lot. Things like Dynamics, SQL Server, Link Server Exchange, those are the big ticket items, and therefore let's get beyond 95%. Now for the desktops, we ask our customers to go beyond about 92%, and sometimes they can get up to 95 as well. A little more difficult because the devices can be regionalized in satellite offices. There's a high IMAC churn. These devices are being re-imaged, taken out of production, put back in. But they're also sort of quasi-lower value assets. They do add up, of course, when in aggregate, but at the desktop level, compared to a server, not as much what we'll call appreciable value. I mean, sure, you've got Office and you've got Windows and so on, but 92% is good as long as, and we'll get to this in a minute, we use this as a canary in the coal mine, your Visio and project counts are in line with statistical expectation of slightly less than 20%. If you are off the skew, being a customer that has a high proportion of Visio or project or development, then it's a game changer. You've got to get really, really beyond 95%. I'll explain that in a minute. And here it is actually. The goals are, again, relative to how big of a company you are. It's what I call, the whoop-de-doo factor. If you've got about, 1,000 devices or less, 5%, yeah, it's about 20 devices, right? Chances are, and we use a frequency stating here. The F equals 1 means frequency equals 1. We always anticipate an Office being on a desktop more or less, about $200, right? That's about $4,000. But the frequency of Visio, statistically, we find is typically around 17% or so. Okay, so there's about $7,000. But if you linearly translate that to a company of 9,000 devices, that changes the money that's on the table. So for larger companies, Microsoft may request, or you should anticipate, do a linear extension. In other words, if I've only got 95% of my devices found, then I'm going to have to take my values and multiply them by a factor in order to achieve a theoretical 100%, because there's some significant money left on the table as you get to be a bigger company. Installation tips. Now, first of all, it does come with its own instance of SQL Server 2012 Express, and it's free. Right? But there's two requirements that follow that. First of all, you now have to use Windows 7. Previous versions of MAP use SQL Server 2008, which means you could use it on XP, but now it's 7. And because you're using the Express Edition, it really only chews up about 1 gigabyte of RAM on your system. So it's not a resource hog in any way. And for those who are curious, yes, you can excuse me, extend it to a standard or enterprise edition of SQL Server. You really don't have to. Install it on any device on the network. I mean, MAP plays nice. It uninstalls well. It's fine. You do not need to install it on a server. Right? You do need a combination of your common Active Directory credentials. That's all you need in order to log on. In fact, if all you're doing is VMware, all you need is your common Active Directory credentials, in other words, your user login, and you're going to need some VM credentials. But if you're doing a Windows-based inventory, which is why you're here, you're also going to need talk to your administrator, and you need the proper credentials as administrator rights in order to inventory the devices. Please don't put it on a virtual machine. We've had customers who've done that in order to isolate it for some particular reason, and there's really no need. And in fact, it does cause communication and other bottleneck issues. In fact, if you default a VM image within another desktop operating system, it will basically only give you, as an example, 1 gig free space of data and a portion of your memory. And it's just not worth it. Just go find a laptop somewhere or an old desktop and plug it in. It doesn't need to be a power horse in any way, but if you contain it within a VM bubble, you will come into some artifacts and creating errors that you just don't need to. So our advice is don't put it on VM. We've had our customers try it. It just doesn't work well. And so once you install it, you will launch into a wizard. Now the wizard has a bunch of scenarios. Yeah, scenarios, methods, and credentials. Oh my. Now this is not just a next thing. In fact, you pick a scenario, and then after each scenario, you declare certain methods, and you declare your credentials, and you run it. Now, most people at the beginning, well, they press all the buttons at once, and we try to tell our customers, like, map's an elevator. Just if you want to get somewhere, just press one button at a time, please. And that's okay, because map is actually built with that in mind, even though it doesn't sort of, the user interface doesn't scream out and indicate you to do that. In fact, it sort of compels you. I want to click all those check marks. The reason why it works this way, or one of the things that it takes advantage of, is this fact, is that once map inventories a device in your environment, it will not inventory it again, which means you can redo a scenario. As an example, if you do the Windows computers and you only get a certain percentage, you can redo it after you fix some errors. And in fact, it's quicker the second time. And so this also allows you to do one scenario at a time, focus on the results and the errors. As well, we have heard, and it is up on TechNet, that a few of the scenarios, when selected together, and I do believe it's Forefront and Link, which collectively use a PowerShell, can actually sort of collide with each other and cause a reset. So do them one at a time. So let's start with scenario number one. We're going to focus on three major scenarios here, the Windows computers and VMware, as we get into it. And so you would simply, in your scenario on the wizard, click on Windows computers right here and get a check mark. Now, the Windows computers will do both desktops and servers, of course, and both physical and virtual based, regardless of what you're reading downstream there, like VM computers. We'll talk about that in a minute. And what, assuming that you're using Active Directory, and 99% of you are, what MAP will do is it'll tap into your Active Directory as soon as you put in your Common AD credentials, and it will pre-populate it with all of the devices and the resident operating system of that device as found within the Active Directory. Now, it's not actually going to each device and finding the operating system and the device name. This information is held like a stub within the Active Directory, like a phone book, like name and address, so device name and operating system. And so your AD actually assists MAP into what we call pre-populating. But there is a problem here, and this is a big one. Moldy AD, as we like to tell our customers. If you're doing a lot of churn or a lot of reimaging at the desktop level and your Active Directory is not keeping up to, okay, where did the old one go issue, it can create phantom devices in MAP, and that can actually distort your success level. Now, the nice thing is that it can distort your OS count if you're not cognizant of it, but it won't distort any of your software titles, because the only thing that it's picking up, again, is the device and the operating system. So we'll be aware of that, and I'll show you how to look for it. You, as soon as you declare your method, your scenario, you then go into the methods and the credentials and so on. The discovery method here is, yes, most customers use the Active Directory as the method. And in fact, within Active Directory, you can actually pick certain forests and trees and so on. I don't have a screenshot for that, but you can actually focus in on a portion of your Active Directory. You can also use your Windows networking protocols in case you don't have Active Directory instituted, let's say, in a regional office or a satellite office. Little known here, but it's kind of neat. It can actually tap into the SCCM agents of the devices. There's a bit of a Rumsfeld problem here, though. If you use this, you don't know what you don't know. If the device doesn't have an agent, then it won't be inventoried. Unless you're selecting multiple functions. You can also scan a particular IP range if you want, like a subnet. You can actually give MAP a list of computer names and credentials, but for the most part, most customers focus on the Active Directory, and the nice thing then, again, remember, since it only inventories once, you can still maintain, hey, just let's pick Active Directory and do it a second time. It will only attack the devices that it hasn't previously inventoried. You put in your credentials. Again, just to get in here, and basically so that MAP can join the Active Directory, it will take your credentials. So you don't have to declare an admin name here. It can be you. So just put it in and away you go. After that, it's going to ask credentials in context to technologies, and one of them, and this is the magic technology of WMI. We'll talk about that in a minute. This is where you need your administrator-like credentials, and so you're going to have to get in contact with the administrator of the network and get him to hand over to you and generate an account name that will give you administrator rights in order to inventory the devices with WMI. This is absolutely separate from your common credentials of logging in. Once all of that is done and you click on Go on the wizard, your status will appear up here. Right now I've got them all set at 0. I kind of did a screenshot a little too early. And you'll notice that you'll be inventorying the devices. They are here depending upon what the devices are, whether you're doing a Windows or VMware. Down here, pay no heed to the registry counts. What is happening down here is MAP is picking up a lot of running processes and services on top of the installs and the devices. And so you will see numbers that are relatively huge. Don't worry about it. And also at the same time, don't think that they're, oh my gosh, 40,000 devices. No. Don't pay a specific focus here, but these are the numbers that you'll be looking at over here on the top. Once the inventory is done, let me just zoom in on this one, you will go back to the interface, it will refresh, and MAP uses, or MAP 8 uses, and I know I'm not supposed to be using the word, but I like to call it Metro. It's the kind of like the Microsoft Store box thing like Windows 8. Most people don't know that you can actually click on these things. And the first thing that you do after your Windows inventory is done is go into the Environment tab on the right-hand side, and you will get these following scenarios, right? Inventory results, Windows environment, Linux environment, and so on. Click on this box because your 85% is great, but not good enough. And we need to get more details on why we didn't get 95, 98%. Click on that box, and then you get to a larger user interface here. The funny thing is here, we actually had just as a funny point, we actually had a customer that had 17% success, and so the green is failed not inventory. Basically, he saw a huge green Pac-Man and thought everything was great. Yeah, I would love, Microsoft, if you're listening, please turn the failed not inventory into red or some other color. Also, from a grayscale perspective, they look identical. Anyways, so you'll get to this screen. Again, you've got to keep going. Now, in order to take a look at the details of why did I only get 85%, what stopped me, click on this option, Generate Inventory Results Report. Once you do that, you'll get an interface on the screen that says, okay, I'm generating your inventory results report, and then it'll go away. And now, in order to get to it, you have to click on the View pull-down menu and view your saved reports. When you view your saved reports, you will then be delivered to a folder interface where you can see the spreadsheets and sometimes even documents that are generated by MAP. You click on it. So it doesn't necessarily pop up. It just generates it, and then you've got to go find it. In fact, with my apologies, I'm ahead of myself here. There it is, View, Saved Reports, Proposals, and you will need to find that spreadsheet. Once you open up the spreadsheet, it's all ready to go. It's available to be sorted and filtered. And your next function here is to take a look at the WMI status. I'll talk about what WMI is in a minute. The successes and the fails are relational. Success is great. Knock them out. The failed machine not found. This is the one, typically the one that we tell our customers more or less, make sure that we can ignore it. Those are the moldy ADs, the moldy machines, the phantom devices that Active Directory said, yeah, you had this device Bob, and it had Windows XP on it, and it's pre-populated. When the inventory runs, it can't find device Bob, and so it says machine not found. Well, it's because it's not there, and in most cases, you can walk away from failed machine not found, but the others, based upon how significant they are, you need to address. And so you can use this spreadsheet within the map report in order to go find the number of the type of failures and how to deal with it. Such as, well, connection timeout means you had a network communication problem. The failed access denied, well, it means that your administrator credentials, more or less, weren't good enough for some reason. Now, just a little bit of a plug here. We will be giving our customers basically a utility that sort of makes it good enough to figure out. We basically then allow our customers to go, all right, well, your Windows Server goal is 95%. If you remove the machine not found, you got 95.6. You're good to go, right? But your Windows desktop, even if we knocked out the failed machine not found, you're still at 85.5. No, you got to keep looking. And you click on the little box there, and you actually get the device list. But that's for our customers. You don't, you don't necessarily need to do that. We just make it more accommodating for our customers. So this WMI, what is it, right? Windows Management Instrumentation. Most of you might be aware of this, so I'll go through it very quickly. It's an underlying technology layer found within your operating system. Now it's common. Started, well, it was optional in 95. And it's basically the magic that allows for remote inventory, deployment. Other tools and other products actually use it. It's used by PowerShell. Spiceworks actually uses it as well. Now, the WMI is not as powerful as, a little plug here for the full functioning SCCM or even Intune, but it is, in most cases, good enough when it works. But MAP is known to fail at times. Sorry, WMI is known to fail at times. This is not MAP's fault, but becomes MAP's problem. And it is an indication that you might have corrupt registry or basically some misbehaving devices from an administrator credential. So this is not a MAP problem. Sorry, it's not a MAP cause, but it is a MAP problem, and thus for you as well. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Assuming that you have gone, all right, incorrect credentials, and I got my level up to 95, 96% on the desktops, we go to the next scenario. And this is the one that confuses a lot of our customers, the VM computers. Now they're thinking, that's for the virtual devices that I have. No, this is for the actual Type 1 Blade servers that are actually hosting your VMs. And in most cases, this is actually done by VMware. Now, interestingly enough, with Hyper-V, it's actually picked up through WMI, so it's not an issue. But the predominant virtual machine hosting technology today is VMware. And so Microsoft has built another scenario that exclusively goes into the VM host and picks up the parent-to-child relationship, which is absolutely critical for getting the best bang for buck on your SQL Server and Windows Server licensing. If you don't absolutely prove that your SQL Server and Windows Server deployments are virtual, then it's assumed that they are physical, and the licensing is different. There is basically better opportunities and better price points at a virtual level in practically all cases. This is why you need to do it. Now, when you're going into the credentials for VMware, you're actually going into a web interface called vSphere. It's a web interface, and it's being run by the VM host. There's really no operating system on the host. It's called vNix, but it's about as complex as the operating system for your microwave, right? And so VMware delivers a management interface called vSphere, which does all of the managing of the guests. This is where you need to obtain the vSphere admin name and password. There's probably only one. Chances are it may be the same for all of the vSpheres that you have. Ask your vSphere people or your VM people who are running this thing as to what it is. And so it has to be plugged in. Once you have done the inventory, and of course what will happen is that map will use your Active Directory to go find the vSphere, because the vSphere does register itself, or sorry, the VM host registers itself on Active Directory, and map will actually find the vSphere, log in, impersonate you, and go in. Now, if you actually want to test if the name and the password are correct, your vSphere management interface is a web interface. You can actually go to the vSphere console and actually plug in the name and password. If it works, it'll work for map. That's a great litmus test before you start plugging it into map. Make sure that the name and password that you're given actually works on all the vSpheres. Go to each of the web consoles and plug them in. Now, in order to figure out how successful you are, you now have to go back into the map user interface and go into the server virtualization. And many of the VMs themselves are listed here: Hyper-V, VMware, and others. Again, just like the other scenario, this box you have to click through in order to eventually get your results. You click through it, and just like the other scenario, you get more information, but again, you have to click on generate the report, click on that, right? And then once you do that, and you again go down to the view, saved files and reports, and you open up your spreadsheet. This is the host and guest details is very critical. It helps you identify the relationships between the guests and the hosts. The guest VMs are located here, FQDN. Actually, the FQDN stands for Fully Qualified Domain Name, so you can actually see the common name at the beginning, and the fully qualified is there. The physical server's name, in other words, the VMware host, is named over here. And it's that relationship that you have to map out such that you can determine, okay, how many SQL servers or Windows servers are being hosted on the VMs by that physical server, because based upon whether it's 2008 or 2012, you can take advantage of what we like to call the all-you-can-eat rule of based upon procs or cores, which we'll talk about later. The biggest reason why you got to go into here is to identify what can't be identified. Physical server name unknown. It turns this little guy right here into an orphan. Orphans are somewhat dangerous. You've got to unorphan all of the guests. If you don't, you have no choice but to, from a reconciliation perspective, is to declare it being physical. There's no other way around it. You've got to find who's hosting that one. And what this means is that if it shows up as unknown, it means you missed a vSphere. You missed a host. Go back to your vSphere administrators, show them the hosts that you have found with that previous report, and ask them, did I miss one? Where'd it go? Chances are you've missed at least one. So go back to your vSphere administrators and help you to identify that missing host so that you have no orphans. Otherwise, you are relegated to reconciling the licenses on a physical level, and that is not in your benefit. Of course, what you want to do, and a little bit of a plug for us, is that eventually the reason why you want to get that relationship is so that you can map out, and this is something map doesn't do, this is us, that you can map out all right, I have these devices, which we've basically turned into letters in order to protect our clients, sitting on this host, and they have these SQL servers, and if I have a 2-proc license over here, it covers everything. This is what you need to do, whether you use our tool or not. This is why you need to get that parent-to-guest relationship. SQL Server cals and additions, all this kind of stuff. Now, weirdly enough, you do have 2 options down along the bottom. And there's, quite honestly, first of all, the additions actually are found simply through the Windows interface alone. You don't need to click on SQL Server in order to get the addition to SQL Server. If you're asking, what are you talking about? The add remove and install information for SQL Server, if you take a look at it on your own machine, you will notice that there is no addition. With Office, you have additions: Microsoft Office XP Professional Edition, Microsoft Office XP Home and Student Edition. The additions are very important to enumerate. With SQL Server, they used to have additions. Well, actually, in 2008, the best you could get from the add remove from a standard Windows inventory was Express Edition, and everything else was not there. It still drives many of us nuts. Again, this is not MAP's fault, but it becomes our problem. The additions can be found with MAP, and in fact, you don't even have to click on SQL Server to find it. MAP will go get the additions for you. As well, if with the SQL Server and SQL Server with database details, and we'll just focus on SQL Server for now, if you have SQL Server 2008 and 2012 Enterprise Edition, it will invoke the event logging and get the number of user counts and device counts, which can be extrapolated in the CALs. The problem here at the moment, and this event logging is actually being dropped into future editions of Lync and Exchange and other Microsoft technologies, and the next version of MAP, from what I understand, 8.5 or something, will take advantage of this as well. But the event logging is not with previous editions, and it's not with the standard editions. So your ability to sort of deduce CALs today is somewhat limited with if you are using predominantly standard or still using the legacy SQL Server 2005. Little difficult. That at the same time, I'm not trying to minimize the requirements for finding CALs, but most of our customers today are focusing on basically a core strategy of deploying SQL Server and paying for SQL Server rather than the CALs. If you're going into MAP, MAP's got some great reports, but we have to bring this up, and hopefully it will be changed. This is just a bit of a caveat here. Many people take a look at the SQL Server Discovery Report and assume that it is the number of installs. It's not. It's the number of instances. As an example here, if you take a look and it says that there are 76 licensed, or well, should be licensed editions, and 18 of them are enterprise. That's not the number of installs. That's the number of instances that are running. And in fact, this data populated that report, and I've color-coded it so that you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's actually only 5 installs of Microsoft SQL Server 2008 or 2008 R2, and you can see that in some cases, and this is just a natural function of SQL Server, you can launch many databases or many instances. But please do not misconstrue this report as being the number of installs and therefore the number of licenses. This is number of instances. So keep that in mind. That's a bit of a whoops. So don't go down the garden path on that one. The next other, like Exchange, Forefront, and Lync Server, again, do them one at a time if warranted. If determining the number of CALs and user touches on, and device touches on Forefront and Lync Server are important to you, then focus on them one at a time. In fact, it's our understanding that right now, if you select Forefront and Lync Server at the same time, I do believe it's these two, since they use PowerShell, it could cause MAP to actually sort of reset. Not that you're going to lose any of your data, basically causes a memory error. A bit of an implosion. It's best to use these things one at a time. With the Exchange Server, and we ask our customers to focus on this one as well, and this doesn't take long. You just hit Exchange Server and you go next, boom, done. Like SQL Server, the additions, whether it's standard or enterprise, is hidden from the standard WMI inventory. And so MAP needs to do some magic in order to go get it. It also picks up the number of mailboxes for each edition, which is absolutely fantastic. The mailboxes are basically user CAL equivalents, so you need to bring those in as well. So select Exchange Server. Again, just do it once. And don't combine it with anything else. Go get the data, wait till it's done, and then go to the next one. To sort of sum it all up, these are the things that have initially frustrated all of our customers on the onset. And there's not necessarily a solution to each and every one of them, but these are the things that you need to look out for. The first one is moldy AD, as I like to call it. Again, if your Active Directory hasn't been purged lately and cleaned, it will basically increase your OS counts shown by MAP. MAP will basically say, you've got all of these Windows XPs, right? Wow, look at them all. And here's the devices. if they don't exist, right? Now you can actually go into the map data, not the map reports, and you can actually check out the last last login user date and figure out if that device hasn't been used in a long time. You can also get in touch with your IT people. Chances are they can just eyeball the whole thing for you going, God, we haven't used that naming structure in 2 years. We have seen moldy AD where devices are beyond 12 months old. So when you're running your first inventory, if the OS counts look incredibly high and they're out of sync with, let's say, anything else that is also brought up, let's say like Office or your SCCM agents, in other words, they're just not aligned. All of a sudden, all I have is 600 more machines with nothing but an operating system. It's a good indication that you've got moldy AD, and you're just going to have to deal with it. You keep going, like don't reset, but just keep going. You can actually knock out the OS counts later after the fact. Second one, significant WMI failure. As much as MAP is a great utility, that's at the end of the day, it may not be worth the time trying to fix all of the WMI failures, and there may be 3 or 4 or 6 of them based upon how much time and resources you have. What we do is we will ask our customers to blend the strategy with, let's say, your SCCM or Altiris or iQuate or so on. And so we basically will overlap the data sets together. This is something beyond the context of MAP, but we're just letting you know that you may be running out of time. You may not be able to have maps be successful because of massive corruption at the WMI or something else. If that's the case, use your network management tool. Focus your MAP efforts on the SQL Server editions found within both the real and the virtual servers, and then focus on VMware. The best bang for buck is getting the virtualization relationships through MAP. This is something that most inventory tools other than products like iQuate with their IQ Sonar cannot do. Again, associated to the best bang for buck on the VMware is those orphans. Look out for those orphans. The orphans are telling you that you've missed a VM server or a host server. They'll cost you if you don't catch it. You'll assume it's real, and you will apply a real license to it when, in fact, it could have participated in an all-you-can-eat licensing within the host because there was enough licenses for it. The SQL Server editions, even though MAP can go find them, sometimes it doesn't. And it's because that your edition of SQL Server probably hasn't had a service pack. And so this is one of the prerequisites, is that if the service pack, if a service pack has not been deployed against the initial SQL Server itself, like 2008, you haven't done any service packs, it can't pick up the edition. So you still won't know whether it's standard or enterprise. Well, yeah, you could think, all right, I'm just going to go install the service pack and then run it again. Here's the problem. MAP doesn't redo inventory. So once it finds SQL Server Unknown Edition, you're stuck, even if you do fix it after the fact. What you need to do then is just simply hunt down those editions by hand or another product and just get the editions. The other big problem as well is gluing all of this data together and doing an assessment so that you can add your licensing and your purchase usage rights and your production states. And MAP is not the tool for that. It's not SAM, and neither is Microsoft Excel. And to that end, we're nearing the end, but again, just a little bit of marketing near the end here. It's our intention, well, first of all, we've gained this knowledge from many of our customers. Lots of them, we typically do a Microsoft SAM engagement in 36 hours or less based upon the customer getting MAP running and fixing the WMI errors and blending with their other tool. And what our customers receive is management-based interfaces where we clean up and normalize the data. We use the, if you're familiar with the ISO 19770-2 specs of what product lines are, license type, we sort of follow along with that. So we clean, filter, and streamline the data so you're not taking a look at junk. We also give your IT department the ability to manually declare the production states for SQL Server and thus redacting them or subtracting them from being counted, and you have that right. And here you can see it. This is a manual declaration. You'd be double-clicking on, click right here and saying, oh, it's production, it's testing, it's other. And that reduces your licensing exposure. And the other things that we do at the desktop level is that we will actually automate what we call the redaction, or the fact that you can have two instances of, or two different versions of the same product line on a device in which Microsoft states only the greater version shall prevail for licensing. Here's a great example. Here's Office Professional Edition. Many versions underneath, but altogether 1,450, but after our redaction process, 1,417, right? And then you can actually, what we do after that is that we invoke the cascading downgrade rights, in other words, where licenses, if there are any extra entitlements, then sort of cascade themselves down the stream, down the waterfall to cover deficiencies underneath. And that is what we've learned from our uses and basically our exposure to Microsoft Map with all of our customers in the past, close to about a year now, as far as embracing Map as a fantastic utility for assisting with Microsoft audits and SAM assessments. We do it, of course, with both. We tend to do it with our SAM advisor partners. I've kept it neutral for now because most of you are actually SAM advisors in the same time, and we would love to talk to more SAM advisors and help you basically execute on engaging a Microsoft SAM assessment with Map, and basically helping the customer and determining your position before the end of the week. That being said, we've got about 10 minutes, and I think I've given ourselves enough time for any sort of comments or questions. Actually, there was one. If you do have one, please send it to me. I'm looking to see if anybody's typed anything in yet. I forgot who sent it to me, but it was this morning. One question is, hey, where do the passwords go, and how do you with Map, and are they secure? And again, I didn't develop Map in any way, but it's my understanding. Well, first of all, the passwords are not saved in the database. They're saved with the application on the user profile on the machine. So and they are encrypted, from my understanding. So the passwords, your AD administrator credentials and your vSphere credentials are encrypted and saved separate from the data. This we know in fact because customers just simply send us the back file through their account, and there's no passwords in there. They're also encrypted per se, and they're contained within the machine that's local. The reports, accessing the reports though through the Map interface, you do not need a password in order to get it. But at the same time, what I'm also trying to say is that the reports themselves, basically like a loaf of bread, are only fresh for about a week or so, and then things start to move. And Map itself really is not meant to be an upper management interface to be shared in either a web context or a multi-person context. It's really meant to be an assessment and planning tool in which one person is making a decision, and Microsoft generates reports and spreadsheets to hand out. So the interface itself is probably not conducive for sharing as a common resource. And that was the question that came to me this morning. I couldn't remember anything else here. Hold on, I'm just going to open up the question poll here. Oh, got a whole bunch here, with my apologies. I got a really small screen here. One moment, and I'll pop it up. Will the presentation be available and the recording as well? Absolutely, and unfortunately, since you're going to have to listen to my voice again, but the presentation is actually a Prezi, and so we'll make that available on the website, and I'll also send you all an email saying thank you with the link to go download it. Does the VM file show, the next question is also, does the VM file show host to cluster information? Yes, it does. The cluster information is found. It is not readily available in a report or any of the interfaces. It is buried. So you can find the cluster that the vSphere, or basically the vCenter ID that the vSphere is clustering with. I think Samantha was asking that question. Samantha, I'll give you the table details to where to go find that information. It's a bit messy in there, but you can find it, and I'll be sending it to you. And let me just open it up to see if there's any more questions. I guess there's, oh, hold on here. There's, I think, one more question coming in if I can get it here. Can you use MAP for streaming applications, AppV, or thin client delivered apps, Citrix, and et cetera? Good question. We've had great difficulty in trying to figure that out. The MAP tool does pick up the Citrix framework technology, the installed apps, the servers. It is there. You can find what we'll call the Citrix footprint within the installed software found on the servers and also in the desktop. So you can actually see the Citrix viewers as well. But that's it from what we understand. That's actually a big misgiving, not of MAP itself as being a SAM tool, but from SAM as a whole. So the general answer is, at today, MAP can't be exploited in order to figure that out. I'm sounding like a Microsoft employee, I'm sorry. But the answer is no. And so we haven't found any way around that as well. And that's actually a really murky issue because, you know, there's a really interesting interpretation of, like, all right, if I am distributing only 10 instances of Visio using Citrix, but to 50 candidates, the question is now, should I be licensed for the fact that only 10 concurrent handoffs of Visio is available, or should I be licensed for the 50 candidates? You know, if you're Microsoft, you're going to say, no, 50, right? If you're the customer, you're going to go, maybe 10. But again, the answer is no. From what I understand, we haven't yet figured out how to actually pick up that kind of telemetry from MAP. I got another question here. It says, will MAP show, and I'm sorry I'm stalling here because I've only got this little tiny box here. Hold on. I'm going to unlock the pane here. See if I can make it a little bigger. There we go. Let's see. Two more questions here. Will MAP show server core counts to use for SQL and BizTalk licensing? Yes, it will show it, though we have found at times, and sometimes this is a misgiving of MAP and sometimes it's not, is that sometimes the core counts are not correct. But yes, the answer is yes, though I do suggest you absolutely confirm the core counts with the CPU description. The CPU description will actually will help you determine, this is how we do it. We actually use the CPU description to determine the actual number of cores built by Intel or AMD. And so now, and the other question is as well, is that what do you mean by cores? Do you mean the actual cores or threaded cores? Because in some cases, threaded cores can actually overrepresent themselves. But there are reports within MAP that will show you the core counts. We know because we pick them up and we use them automatically. But they are there, though I do suggest that you sort of, in some cases, eyeball them, make sure that the core counts look right. The other thing as well is, most people don't know this, you can actually turn cores off, right? So keep an eye on what you think looks, that's ridiculously high or ridiculously low. In most cases, you know, MAP will pick it up and away you go, you're fine. The last question here is, can we use vCenter rather than vSphere to manage VMware? Well, I don't know. You got me on that one. My interpretation of that is that vSphere, basically like a hotel manager, determines the number of guests that they are hosting. And that is a web application on the actual server itself. vSphere, it presents itself as a Windows application and is a management interface that connects the vCenter's, sorry, I got it wrong. vCenter is the Windows application that will connect a grouping of the vSpheres and will accommodate for a transfer of the virtual machines from one vSphere or one host to another based upon dynamic load requirements, or DRS. Unfortunately, though, Philip, who's asking that question, I don't know. My gut feeling is no on that one. We've got just about 2 minutes left, and thank thankfully, we ran out of questions that I can say I don't know to. If you have any other questions, please feel free to give me a call. I'm at 303-872-7738. I'm also Steve at assetlabs.com, or go to our website. We will send everybody a copy of this presentation. And if you as a customer, or if you are a SAM advisor, or one of our resellers, or want to be one of our resellers, and you have a customer with a problem, we're more than happy to help out and give our advice as to how to get MAP moving along. It's just what we do. Feel free to give us a call if you have any more questions about MAP, and as well, hopefully, how we can actually accelerate your SAM engagement to within a business week by blending MAP with your other provider tools and putting it together in a management interface that you and your team can actually execute on within days. That's it for the demonstration. For those of you on the Eastern Time Zone, have a great lunch. For those of you in Europe, thank you for holding off till end of day, and for those of you on the East Coast, it's time for another coffee, or sorry, the West Coast. Again, any questions, give me a call. Greatly appreciate it. Cheers. Bye-bye.